KWNR Dad on the Jim Cressman podcast.
On the podcast with me today, my good friend John Marks, one of the most benevolent gatekeepers that our industry has known for the past few decades. John was head of global country programming and editorial at Spotify for the last 7 years or so. Prior to that, he was at XM satellite radio. And prior to that, he spent about 30 years in terrestrial radio. So, John, great to have you on the podcast. And thanks for being here today.
I can't hear you, Jim. I can't hear you. I'm feeling old right there. It's great to be here. And thank you for your very nice introduction. I'm glad to be here and talk music. I never get tired of that.
So what got you on the road to this journey of working in the music industry? I mean, were you a musician at one point? Like, what sort of lit the fire for you to be close to this business for as long as you have been?
It's it's really an odd thing. I didn't grow up in a musical family. It just seems to have been with me ever since I can recall. I mean, I was thinking, back as to my earlier days when I was a kid, I'd be, upstairs listening to the phonograph player at the time. The first ever shuffle was a stack of 45s on an automatic thing, and it would just click and go down to the next one, click and go down to the next one. And it was a lot of my parents, what I would call bad, crappy music, but it just got me into music. And I've always been curious about music. And, from there, I got exposed to bluegrass. I got exposed to Southern gospel. I got exposed to black gospel, and I just had this fascination with music all throughout. And then when I got old enough to figure out radio, that fired me up to want to be in that part of the business. And who didn't, growing up, didn't want to play a guitar and impress the girls? And I just never had the passion, work ethic, dedication, whatever you want to call it, to see that through. It was very technical, and I will say boring to a child in my age category. It just wasn't interesting enough to me to keep my attention, but music was. And so, as I was figuring all of that out over the years, radio just seemed to be like the direction to go to express my passion and love for music and find ways to work in it outside of those kind of things where I knew I simply didn't have a chance. And so in the long and short of it, that's kind of where the point of origin begins.
Yeah, you're attracted more to the finished product than you are to the creation of it, which I can empathize with and understand. I mean, I love music too, but I never had any gifts, particularly speaking, or the patience to deploy the time against a skill that it takes to develop, to really become proficient with an instrument or whatever. But Love music, man. Got to be close to it. So I totally get that.
I am totally there. And that's why I admire, in my heart, it's just like, I just love being around it, because it's not about envy. It's about, man, I just, not that I know what it takes to get there, but in a small way I do, because I washed out really fast and really early in those kind of things. And I watch these session musicians and touring musicians and artists and producers who hear the smallest thing and who can read a note and make it sound like they've been playing it half their lives. I just have nothing but enduring and lasting respect for anyone and everyone in that field, because it takes work, dedication to get to that point. And I smile every time I'm able to be around people like that, just to watch. Absolutely.
Yeah, not even to take into account the effect that it had, the positive effect that music and art in general has on culture, right? Like, we live in such a time of volatility and divisiveness. And one thing that I always love is when I go to a show and I watch people all singing along to the lyrics of their favorite song and dancing along to the beat of their favorite song. They are not looking at each other with judgment in their eyes going, are you a Democrat or a Republican? Like, there's unity in the drug that music is that brings us
Right.
all together, right? And so
Absolutely.
as I've gotten older, and I still love music, but I've also been able to develop other appreciations for it, like the one I just mentioned, where I go, we need this. Like, this is
Yes.
one of the things that helps glue us together as a society, and when you go
Agreed.
to a Luke Bryan show or a Jay-Z show and you just see people bumping and grinding and having a great time, it's like, this matters to people, man. We
It
have to have
does.
this. Yeah.
It touches people's spirits in a way that I don't even think they understand or think about it until you're in some of these moments. And it's like even today there are still songs of when I hear it for the first time and I hear a lyric and it just like, whoa, just the other day, it's like I started tearing up when I heard a song, and it's like, man, it just viscerally affected me, and I
Which song
love.
was it?
It's called "Carry Me" by Need to Breathe, and it was just a beautiful song, and it just hit me in a moment that wow, this is really cool, and almost a message for me at that point in time, and that's really what music's about too, and everybody's different but the same, and it's like they're looking for those songs that speak to them, and in their own ways, and when you see that expressed in an arena or a festival or whatever, and you see all that going, everybody's together on it. It's really even more amazing to watch that. Absolutely right, because for a minute, everybody's leaving the troubles of the world or their lives behind the ticket gate.
Yes. Yeah, and you can I like that point that you just made. You can convey important messages effectively. You remember Garth Brooks' "We Shall Be Free" back to like
Right,
whatever that was, 1996. Like songs like that that had very poignant messages that were important for people to hear, but they weren't being preached at them. They weren't
right.
being pushed down their throat. It was it was camouflaged in a great melody and with great lyrics, but it still meant something. And I think that that's some of the magic of art, and that's where you can have this artistic expression that actually stands for something that might be socially imperative, but it's a little bit positively covert. You
Ab-
know,
I like that. Yes, that's
yeah.
absolutely true.
So probably I was thinking about this interview, and I've met you a number of times. You and I were on a panel together in Toronto, and I was thinking about what my audience would love to glean from this conversation. And with all your expertise in editorial at Spotify, I would imagine one of the most common questions you get from young artists is, "How do I get my song to blow up at Spotify?"
I've only heard it about 10 times today. So it's
Yeah,
and how can I get on a playlist? Yes, all of that stuff.
yes,
And it's just like any other way of approaching success in music. It's a part of a process, and those processes always evolve and always change. And I think where I came into Spotify, back whenever that was in 2015 or whatever 2014, uh, it was the methodology of executing the music was different. Spotify was looking to grow their brand and grow in their subscriber numbers, and find credibility in the music sectors that were important to them, both in the United States in particular, but globally. But they were only a few years. I can't remember the exact number, so don't hold me to it. But to say, I think they were maybe 5 years into the United States as a business when I came through the doors, and others like me, not just me. And so we were brought in for a purpose of partnering with the music community, helping them understand what Spotify was at that time and is, the possibilities that Spotify could be, and to support the music community, not only in just in playlisting, but supporting them in just knowing that this newfangled gadget is okay. And it's hard to when you're looking at it today. It's like, God, I think I'm talking about forever ago, and it's not. It's only that long ago when all that was going
Well,
on.
you came over
And
in 2015, and at
15, yeah.
that time, what were some of the tips and tricks that you would give artists to help get their music some attention on that platform? And then the second half of that question is, how did that evolve and change as as things progressed over the next 7 years,
Well, in
6 years?
at Spotify, and again, it's a then and now kind of almost different universe. Is that then the interest in Spotify was a lot less, and the traffic was infinitely less in terms of people who are looking for that as a vehicle to expose their music. The subscriber base, it'd almost be interesting to go back and look at that. That's something I haven't done. What their subscriber base was back then compared to what it is now. I'm sure it's massively higher today. And it was different because I was actually trying to find music to support the playlists we were in. I wasn't being inundated by calls and queries and make me famous. It was and I was more or less going around and say, it's okay, you're going to like this, it's a good experience, you're going to enjoy the exposure that Spotify provides you as an artist or even a songwriter and during those times. And it was just a little different universe in how I had to approach curating the music, because I was trying to fill the playlists up and get people interested and find music. And the methods of finding music back then were entirely different than it is today, for sure. And
So
so
was there more weight on editorial rather than pure metrics at that point in time? Is that you were sort of working your relationships from being at Sirius XM to
Mhm.
develop more gravitas within the country music industry? And
Yes.
when you did that, was there a particular success story that sort of helped catch fire for the platform and wake everyone the fuck up in Nashville to look at this and go, wow, there's a ton of opportunity here?
Well, I think that I'll tell you where the awakening came, and it wasn't in the artistic area. It was at the record label area, when everywhere I went, I always heard everybody complaining about that Spotify wasn't scaling and all these other things from the label executives. And it was at the end of one year. I wish I could remember the year, but I was having a casual cocktail leading into holiday with one of the executives in the industry, and he said, we were going into the end of this year 55% off of our target. And then we got our Spotify Sound Exchange check. And we were profitable just like that. And that was the turn for the labels in particular, because they were always the ones as a radio, these streaming services, they don't pay us, not worth the trouble. And to many degrees, they had a point. I'm not going to argue that, how wrong they were. It's just simply in that time, they had only certain ways that they could exercise their leverage. And that wasn't one of them at the time, or any of the streaming services. Maybe Apple to a lesser degree because they had the downloads going and sales vehicle going. So that was the turn in attitude almost
Right.
overnight. I mean, not over, yeah, overnight. When the labels started receiving their paychecks and they started seeing profitable enterprises, it changed certainly the perspective on that, and that really helped. I mean, it was a bit of a sea change there, and those elements of growth for the label, also translated to independent artists and the like, and all of that kind of began a turn into I got to be there now,
Yes.
and it was all of that, and it wasn't by any means a substitute for radio. Still isn't, but it's one of those things where it was kind of a kind of a, I won't call it a massive awakening, but it was an awakening that kind of has swept and where today it's yeah, if you're not on Spotify, it's not an essential ingredient of your marketing campaigns. You're missing a big piece of the puzzle.
Definitely. And back to the artist question, one thing that we often urge clients to do is urge their fans to save their songs, share their music, and follow them on Spotify. That is a model that's still tried, tested, and true today, and probably was one of the ones that you recommended back in 2015. Is there anything else an artist can do to increase their opportunity to get more consumption?
Save, share, follow is certainly a mantra that it's kind of like blocking in football. You always have to practice it, always have to do it. You always have to practice the fundamentals, and that's that. You can't ever forget it. There are a couple of things that really I'll say that you have to do today, and social media is a bit of a currency in the platform these days, and I think that many people are curating based on social media reaction and algorithmic reaction, and social media creates touches with your immediate audience. That's really critically important. The algorithms also are critically important. How do you touch the algorithms? Let's just say you have a current single. Let's call it a single, whatever that is. And I would always advise somebody a couple of weeks behind that, do an acoustic single of the same song. Maybe do a remix. And each one of those is a new release in the parlance of digital. And each one of those, again, is a message to touch base with your audience on, hey, I've got a new song. Check out this version of this song or that. And, tell your friends, share it, all of that stuff. And the different versions of those songs, I always tell people, it's not about the number of streams you get on it. It's about where it's being found in the digital universe. Okay. There are hundreds, thousands of acoustic playlists that are not specific to genre, hundreds of thousands of remix playlists or playlists where editors and algorithms really don't care. The point of origin is Canada, Nashville, wherever, and you do it for those purposes. It's not about. It is about gaining audience, grabbing audience attention, but the primary intention is to stimulate algorithms, and it's not going to be, oh my gosh, look what happened on that first thing, it's amazing. It's not that. It's a process of drilling down and finding those elements that work in your particular and the artist's particular circumstances, and those are they're true, but not as much tried, and I think that because people are cultured to think that, well, I don't want to interrupt this song. I don't want to interrupt this momentum on this music that I have out right now. And I would always tell people, still do, that fire begets fire. If you put something else in behind a hot song, it might carry you further because it might continue to build interest in the current song and the other. And so it's different. I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just different than radio, where you have your song, you track it up the charts, you write it down, bring another one. It's just a different method of consumption and usage. And because people are so cultured into the radio way of doing things, not right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just that's a different set of circumstances, and not all the time do those rules readily apply to digital.
Yeah, more releases within a shorter time frame than what people in the industry have been used to. And
Correct.
I would say the industry has had a hard time adapting that 30-year model, 40-year model, or even more than that, to wrap their heads around what you just explained. Some people, I'm sure, have been quick studies. They've realized that the more they release content, the quicker they release it, the more chance they have to gain momentum, which will be beneficial to their back catalog that already exists on the streaming service. But there's probably
Yes.
a lot of people who just want to stick. I know we struggle with it with our major label conversations up here, where it's like we
Hmm.
have to do things systematically, and it's like I get it, but we're playing it the same game, but with a new set of rules.
That's true, and uh, they are largely radio and streaming are largely parallel roads. They have intersections at various points and places. Uh, you'll have a song, maybe in digital, that is doing well, and a song every once in a while you get some synergy between radio and digital on the growth and decline of a song in its current nature. It only happens every once in a while. It doesn't happen all the time, and I think that and the difference is like you have you, one song has one chance, at the golden brass ring or whatever they call it, and there have been times when it was taking its slow trudging crawl up the charts that I would have been in and out of a song, 4 or 5 times over the course of the run, on its chart run, and it's it would be sorry, no reaction, sorry, no reaction. Then when it started getting a little more critical mass in the chart, it would kind of start following in that jet stream. So those things would happen from time to time,
So,
and
John, can I just stop you there for a second? Can you
sure.
break that down for me a little bit? So let's say you've released a song, it's not getting a reaction at Spotify, it starts climbing the charts at radio. All of a sudden, people are searching it out on Spotify. What are you looking for in terms of monthly listenership or people searching out or seeking out the song? Like, what are the metrics that you're looking for? Back when you were in that editorial position to go, okay, this song has some momentum, people are generating interest in it.
Um, and I think herein lies the rub, somewhat between editorial support, organic play, algorithmic play, you know, fan supported saves and repeats and follows. It's and if it's all editorial support, it's not doing anybody any good. If John Marks loves it and the rest of the world is saying, "Meh," it's what are you going to do? And you can look at the graph and say, even labels, when they look at a song that an artist was having some success on, and say, well, yeah, it's 90% editorial. John Marks loves that song, but there's no other support in the rest of the zone, and I'd have to agree. I say, yeah, that's correct. And if it's not generating organic play and support from the algorithms, it's probably researching in the playlist ecosystem, but it's kind of like, okay, that's great, but it's not garnering any support, or it's not, people aren't finding that song and wanting to know more about it, and that's really a key elemental ingredient about building that algorithmic and organic support, because if you have that, and you've got a kind of an even graph between editorial support, and you have the algorithmic support and the organic support with fans, it's far better looking than it is, 90-95% editorial. It's and I can see why, people and labels would get wise to that, and they said, that's, go back and start building your audience, and call us later. And I'd have to say that that's a correct approach.
Now, how accessible is that information for the artists themselves? So if you're an artist and maybe you're an independent, maybe you're distributed by a label or you're not, and you want to find out how your song is performing, maybe they've developed a good relationship with people like yourself and they've got the odd editorial playlist, but they don't know how to tell, where the participation trophies is versus the first place finishes for their song right now.
Yes, right.
How easy is that data to access, and how do they go about it?
Well, if you're a verified artist on Spotify, and I invite anybody from Spotify to refute anything I'm saying or to correct me. It's been a while since I've been there. I don't speak for them. I need to make that clear to everyone and to Spotify who may be listening.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
I'm just speaking on my background and experience in that area. And please repeat the question. I apologize. Oh,
Oh,
how does
that's
an
okay.
artist? how does an
as
artist
an
find out how
artist,
they're doing? Yeah,
editorial versus organic. So how do they
gotcha.
pull that data off of their
Thank you.
account so they can analyze it?
It's called Spotify for Artists, and every verified artist has a page where they can look at those very things. They can look at their markets, their strong markets. They can look at the playlists that they are on, vis-a-vis editorial, vis-a-vis algorithmic, third-party playlists, listeners' playlists. You can look at all of that data and find out. And I talk to so many people even today outside of my current realm that they've used that to plot tours. It's like, okay, we can do these markets and we can work these clubs and do circuits off of that, and that's the smart play. And if you need to develop algorithmic play, you can develop strategies to do that. Or what are you going to do to touch your fans? And that's why I think that today and moving forward, as algorithms play a larger part in the editorial process, and social media, kind of drums that support. You need those two elements as currency, and I would kiddingly tell most people, really not so, that hey, look, the humans, look at the world around you. Human curation is, uh, I won't say, it's like, I don't want to be extreme, like say it's going away, but AI is a part of the plan for anywhere, any life, and I would dare say music as well, and the digital things. And so you have to make plans to figure out how to work within that system, and that means kind of finding your way through it now while it's early, and I think those are important things that I tell people, and you need to devise strategies to do that. The editorial support, is really good, and I get it. If you can get on New Boots or Wild Country or whatever it is, it gives you a lift, and it feels really good, on the lift going up. But if you don't have that organic support, as I described a little bit earlier, it's a sugar crash, that just whack, you go down, you lose, it's like the air goes out of the balloon, and now what are you going to do? And that's the mixed blessing of having the playlist support, the editorial support, without having the other foundational elements around it.
And increasing your chances of getting added to more playlists by having more versions of your songs existing in the ether.
That too, I mean, all that
Yeah.
are. I just regard them now these days as just necessary support mechanisms to get that effort moving. Absolutely right.
Okay, so I understand why companies become more data driven. It's just more efficient. But one of the things about you in particular is that back in the Sirius XM days, you were instrumental in launching the careers of Florida Georgia Line by giving them support when terrestrial radio wasn't. Chase Rice, Kelsey Ballerini, Old Dominion. You were a huge advocate for Canadian artists who would gain some traction, whether it was Emerson Drive, who I've worked with over the years, or Chad Brownlee, or Jeff Moskaluk. So you played a huge part in development of careers that have gone on to be very successful, partly because your gut instinct told you to roll the dice and take a chance on these artists when nobody else would. Algorithms aren't going to do that.
Probably not in the same way, for sure. I think that, and that's where I think the fundamental difference lies between John Henry and the hammers and the automated track laying thing, and the old story. It's like it's really not a race. It is kind of man and machine. It's not a race. It's just a different way of looking how you're going to find your exposure to the audience. I think that. And to that I'll say yes. I was these artists had an appeal to me that I was able to give proper exposure to an audience that would be able to express their preference. And it's like I'll say I gave it exposure, but the audience discovered these people. It wasn't me as such.
You gave it exposure, they gave it momentum. and if
That's
not for the momentum, it wouldn't have gone anywhere.
I think that's fair, and I think that and there's other elements of timing, and God bless all those people you mentioned, because not only did they have really good music that was being created by them, all of the artists that you talk about not only had the good music, but they were ready to take advantage of the momentum that they were given and provided by that audience reaction. You look at all of them, and they were all seasoned. They had been doing time in the trenches, all the things that I'm telling young artists today. They were touring the college circuit. They were making their own music and selling their own CDs at the time. They were knocking on doors and saying, "Hello, I'm so and so. Check us out." All those fundamental elements that I'm trying to direct and help people understand today, but they just have to be directed in a different way than that, but somewhat the same. It's getting out and touring, making your music and getting it out and building your fans, a little at a time. Being patient.
Yeah,
It's the
those
stuff.
fundamentals are still instrumental.
They are still. I mean, I talk to artists today. I just kid, but it's true. It's they're waiting for the star bus to pull up and be whisked away, and the rest is history. And it's not that. I mean, there might be one or two that happen like that, but you look at Florida Georgia Line and you look at Old Dominion. They weren't overnight successes. They had been plowing in the trenches for however long they have been, working and being turned down and being told no, their fundamental belief in themselves and not having a plan B and say, we just got to make this work. And they just had the passion for it, have the passion for it. When a lot of people would have turned around and went home, they just kept going, and then a door opened, and then other doors opened, and look at them today. It makes my heart proud to have seen them be able to accomplish what they did. They did it. They did it on their own. When they had the door open to them, they knew what to do with it, and that's the difference between somebody being in position, being ready, and others who like what just happened? What do I do now? And it's I've seen that happen too, and the opportunity can leave you if you're not ready.
Yeah, you could be one of the last great gatekeepers for exposure in the business who exists outside of an algorithm. It's going to be really interesting to see how this grows and develops over the next 10 years.
I'm with you. I'm interested myself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm with you though, as like you said earlier, it may not be a terrible thing because artists will be more compelled to educate themselves more on what they need to do to garner the attention to get the ads on the playlist. One quick question I was going to ask you is that before you left Spotify, TikTok was starting to really affect, as I understand it, the influence of what potentially could be garnered as an ad or as a consideration. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
TikTok was having a big influence.
Yes, it was. It is. I'll say it was true. Because it was on TikTok and blowing up, it wasn't automatic. But that did have an influence on editorial behavior, and I think rightfully so. I mean, you have to look at it. If you got something that's blowing up in the way that it's blowing up, I think it merits attention, right? So we would give it the appropriate attention, I think that and I would hear from, it was like the line was forming here where labels are signing up TikTok artists, and they didn't have infrastructures, they don't have managers, they barely had a song, and all of a sudden they're in this whirlwind of the Shark Tank, it's like I kind of felt bad for them in a way, but I would imagine, notwithstanding the philosophical look at that and how you feel about it, everybody's winning in that area, But I think that,
They're
you
just
know,
in a position where they have to learn on the fly, and sometimes that's
well,
okay, you know?
and they'll learn about the, you know, some of the disposal natures of this business, and so I think that could be a lesson too. And I think that, you know, the and what and you know what I'd tell people, especially on those, it's like, well, so and so's got 30 million plays on whatever. You know, I said, great, you know, that's awesome, good for you. And But the, you know, the that is a difference, and that's really what artists need to really truly focus on, for sure. But I would also tell those who are in that lane trying to push people into playlists that, you know, playlists are an ecosystem. It's kind of like an aquarium. You know, it's got the right you know, combination of music and all of those elements to and you need the song needs to live in the ecosystem, you know, and the ecosystem may not be good for the song. The song can live on its own in the rest of the world. And you know, the things that I saw about TikTok artists in broad general terms is they generated a lot of interest, they generated a lot of activity, you know, but very few worked in a playlist mechanism.
Right. Yeah,
Researched,
it's
I should say.
interesting. It's interesting too how it's affected the production and even the writing of songs. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe you get paid on a song if someone skips it within the first 30 seconds, right? A
Uh,
stream doesn't actually count.
that is the rumor I hear.
Yes. So, given that that's the metric that gets you paid, it is just naturally that the format will evolve to a point where people are putting more attention grabbing hooks or gimmicks of whatever they can pull off on the front end of these songs to mitigate the opportunity that people might get bored and skip past them.
Well, you look at, I mean, Ed Sheeran is the poster person for that whole thing. I mean, him and a guitar, and look what he did in streaming. Continue this like and I'll say yes. You can. I think there are certain attributes of songs today that probably aren't as viable as yesterday. But I don't say that, you know, in a broad sweeping motion. You know, but you look at let's take go back to FGL, Florida Georgia Line, Cruise. You know, what was so special about that song? When we were listening to it, we were saying, you know, listening to their EP, and I said, you know, I kind of like that song because it starts with a hook, and that's kind of a new thing, and I really haven't heard that a lot. So I think that might be something that you know, could be interesting. And it wasn't like, fellas and ladies, we have a history making smash on our hands. That was not ever uttered. It was just, yeah, well, okay, that sounds good. Let's give that a try. And kaboom. And it's like I would tell DJs when I was a program director. If you're on the air telling a story, begin at the end. You know,
Right.
tell people what's happened, then what's going to happen, and it's a tried and true method that's really, you know, I think applies probably more so to streaming today because of the technological and attention span difficulties all humans have. And I think it probably applies more truth today, but it's been kind of a universal truth that just hasn't been practiced as widely. I would
Very,
say.
very interesting. Very interesting. Do you remember the movie American Beauty with Kevin Spacey before
I
he
did
was
not
known as
see
a
it.
creep? Okay,
Uh,
so he
no.
I mean the movie's brilliant. It is brilliant, but it basically starts with him explaining that by the end of the telling of this story, he won't be alive anymore, and he just doesn't know it yet. So it starts with this
Gotcha.
very eye-catching, interesting scene, uh, and it sets up this narrative that just makes you, you know, glued to the story from that point forward, wondering when this when it's going to break into the plot climax, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that there are different mechanisms of art, whether it's telling a story, whether it's something as deep as a film, or even a song where you can go, okay, let's not waste any time. Let's get to the good part right away and tease them to keep them engaged and involved. So it's just so interesting to see how these different methods of distribution of music actually affect the writing, creative, and production components of the music.
Well, I'm looking up a song here. I'm sorry if I'm taking my gaze off of you for a second because the song is not coming to me adequately. But yes, it's and just like every point in history, like in the music history, it's been like that where songwriting takes shape. Novelty songs hit long guitar riffs in songs back in my day of listening to rock music, and all of those things kind of change flavor after a while. And I was like, I found the song "Stay a Little Longer" by the Brothers Osborne, and this was in the early, I'll call it mid days of Spotify's growth. And that song just researched like a mother with that however long guitar solo it was on the fade down end, and I don't know if that would do that today. I'd be curious to know, quite frankly, because I think some of the elements of musicianship and all of that, and just like where FGL kind of triggered this, in the snide vernacular of bro country. I don't buy that one, but many people do, and I respect it. But they changed the entire course of the genre from a production perspective. I mean, it was, and you forget then it was a sleepy format, kind of mid-tempo range. Nothing against Lady A, but Lady A, and kind of soft AC crossover music was kind of the order of the day. And FGL added some fun to the engagement, and a lot of people, just as they always do, hop on that bus and start replicating. And I think with some good reason in many ways. And there were good ones and not so good ones in that. And it's the same here, where it changes the function of songwriting. And what I would say back then, and I'd say today, publish or perish. It's like either you adjust with the times or not. You can bitch about them all day long, but you just got to hop on the train if that's where it's going, or not.
Man, that leads us right into our next part of this discussion, which is what is next for you? Because you've had this long storied career, you've done so well, and now you're in a position where you're making some moves again at this point in your life. So tell us a little bit about the next few months / years for John Marks.
I still want to do what I've been doing, and being in the privileged position of being on the edge, cutting edge of, I'll say, country music, but music in general. I love discovering hardworking, talented people who deserve getting exposure, who deserve wider audiences, who put in the work to make that happen. And I want to find ways to facilitate their hard work in my ways. And when I say done, that's mine, but to be able to take the fundamentals that I've learned over the years in radio, Sirius XM, and Spotify, help others hopefully learn that and help them establish plans, help them establish strategies to finding a wider audience. And what is probably going to be the most crowded music universe that the world has ever seen. When you're looking at, on Spotify alone, there's like, 60,000 songs a day are uploaded into the service. There are only 800 people who are making over $1 million in the entire artists in the universe. And you look at, it's not even a tenth of 1% of the artists in the Spotify platform who are making 100K, so it's just simply, finding your audience, has to take on different means and methods. And editorial support is going to continue to be an important one for the time being. I don't eschew it or tell people not to think about it or try for it or hope for it. The same thing with radio. Their elements of business are changing. And, if an artist wants to be successful, they have to find those ways to figure out the system to be able to build their audience and work toward the fame that they want to see happen. And it could be just, I just want to put some songs out for my friends and region and whatever, or, I'm just putting it out for buddies, or I want to sell out stadiums. Everybody has their own reasons for wanting to put out songs. When you're in Nashville or in Toronto and you're encountering a country music artist who is wanting to tell you, I want to sell out stadiums. Well, sure, got it. Okay, want to have a number one? Yeah, got it. Yeah, and but it's from there to the beginning. There's a bit of a route that has to be followed, and the beautiful thing about it is today there are so many different paths to take it to get there. It used to be just one, and that would be to radio. And if you weren't able to do that, you were consigned to local bars for the rest of your life. And that's not the case now. Spotify and Apple and all of them offer an artist an open door to a worldwide audience, worldwide.
So
And
you're going to
that's
do some consulting on that front,
I guess
which is great.
Cutting to the chase, yes. That's
Yes.
and trying to help develop audience in their territories and others. Yes.
And so, without giving away what you would charge for on this podcast, because I don't want to ask you to do that, what are some basic tips that you could give a struggling independent artist today? Maybe something we haven't covered yet on the podcast, or maybe we have already and it's just redundant, but something that you could say, hey, listen, here's some free advice for you. This will likely help move the needle for you and your music on consumption.
Here's some free advice for you. We have covered it, but I'll just hopefully do a brief summary. Release frequently. Have a strategy to release frequently. Release different versions of your song when it's appropriate. Actively build your social media audience. Create content that helps create interest in the artist, not only in your releases, but who you are as a human being. All of those help build audience, help play into the algorithms, which will help create editorial interest. I think, in a nutshell, those are the things you need to do. Sounds real simple. I wish it were simpler than what it sounds, but it's not. But those are the fundamentals, and really anybody can do it. I know so many people in Canada and the United States who are doing it all on their own, and they're doing their own content, they're doing their own releasing. Them and one or two people are pressing this business plan forward, and it can be done with minimal people, but high effort, high concentration, high dedication to purpose, and that's what needs to happen.
Brother, what a way to wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was an honor to be here, and may I throw in a shameless plug?
Please do.
johnmarks.me. That's my web splash page. Visit. No promises, no guarantees, but I will answer you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me here.